Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our Saturdays with Tara Hangout on Air. I'm Mary Beth at the Law of Attraction Club, and we're on the web at the loaclub.com. On these Hangouts, we collaborate with our friends Tara. This Hangout is the summary of our theme for the week and continues on our member conference line. So right now we are going to be continuing with more of the book that we are bringing through Tara, Life on Earth, a User Manual. And here's the preface. What channeling is, debunking the myths. You can get invites to our open calls, which we offer periodically, and our powerful free letting go process by going to the loaclub.com. So now Robin is going to be bringing through Tara for us today. So we welcome Tara and Robin. Over to you guys.
We like to explain that only a part of the consciousness that is really who you are is focused into the physical personality that you believe is you, so that you can then begin to consciously consider the larger part of you, who continues to remain non-physically focused. Once you remember that you are a physical extension of source energy, then you can begin to consider and consciously tend to your alignment with your larger, eternal, non-physical counterpart. Abraham through Esther Hicks, November the 1st, 2010. We who are known as Tara are a non-physical consciousness. We have been involved with this one and others in the formation and growth of this community called the Law of Attraction Club. This book is about the Law of Attraction. There are many different ideas about what this law is, and even the name itself does scant justice to the power of this universal force that orchestrates everything that exists. We are collaborating in the creation of this book so that you'll know definitively what it is and how you can use that knowledge to change your life. This book is a channeled writing. Now we know that for many of you physically focused creatures who are coming to this subject for the first time, this channeling thing may sound a bit weird. And so our intent with this preface is to give you, up front, some idea of who we are, what channeling is, and how this book came about. It will be the short version. A more complete understanding will emerge as we get into the longer story of who you are and what you're doing here. We're not asking you to suspend logic or take anything on faith. We encourage you to keep an open mind, and all your questions will be answered. Back in 1990, this one's first exposure to the concept was when his partner Eva Gregory left a CD in the car of Esther Hicks channeling Abraham. Long story short, what followed from that was 18 years of listening to over 2,000 hours of Abraham, going to their seminars, asking questions from the hot seat, and so on. Through all that time, Eva and he had only a vague idea what channeling was all about, except that they both thought it was something they would never do. But what was compelling for them both was that what they were hearing rang true. Questions remained, but for the first time, they were getting answers that made sense. In 2008, this community began with Nina Farrell channeling us, which then gave this one, the engineer, unlimited access to ask his questions. Shortly after that, Eva, and then this one himself, began channeling. Perhaps we should say they began conscious channeling, because in a very real sense, you all channel. For most, it's not a conscious awareness, but channel you do. And this preface is to give you some idea of what we mean by that. In these intersections that we have with all of you, we're pushing the boundaries of our understanding. We're moving into new territory as we explore together the nuances of both your physical game of life on Earth and your non-physical connection to Source. Nothing stands still. Everything continues to evolve. Let's start by setting the scene. Most of you are used to thinking of yourselves as in things that pre-exist. For example, you think of yourselves as having been born into an existing world. And even if you're beginning to see that this space-time world of yours is not the whole story, when it comes to non-physical, mystical, spiritual things, you drop back into assuming that there must be a pre-existing order to everything. In regard to channeling, if you do some research, you'll soon discover a lot of very particular and detailed stories out there about it, with rules for how to do it, and even what you need to guard against. We say phooey to all of that. Even as you create your own physical world, so your non-physical world is very much also your own personal creation. And as this discussion progresses, we recommend that you begin to develop an ongoing awareness that you're the creator of the context of everything you experience. In other words, we're inviting you to step away from thinking of yourself as in things outside of you, be they physical or non-physical, and step with us into the space where you see yourself, where you feel yourself, creating this context around you, second by second. As with all subjects, with channeling, there are some things that are absolute. Those come from the essence of who you are, and so they just are. The absolutes are not a choice you make, and it is our intent to always start from that storyless foundation. Then there will be your story about it. There are certain things you've already chosen to believe about channeling, and now you will have the opportunity to make new choices. First, let's look at the mechanism of which channeling is just one aspect. What is often not well understood is there is an always-on connection between different aspects of you. It's what Abraham was talking about in that quote we began with. There's the conscious thinking you that's hearing and considering these words. There's the subconscious you, where all of your default decisions are made. There's what we would loosely call your higher self or your inner being. The connections you have go all the way back to the collective consciousness you variously call Source or the universe or all that is or God. Being in the physical realm, you tend to see these different aspects as discrete clumps. Well, we need to blur the lines a little here, because you're essentially a non-physical entity even as we are. And in non-physical, there are no boundaries and beginnings and ends. So this mechanism we're talking about is not so much a connection between clumps as it is a merging of energies. We could get close to this idea, perhaps, if we consider source to be like white light. Dividing that light with a prism gives a spectrum. Even as there is no boundary between the colors in this spectrum, there is only more or less of one than another. So there is no boundary between the components of you and all that is. Try this. Take a moment here and close your eyes. In your mind, turn away from facing the world and about face back towards us. Now, to the extent that you can, let yourself become aware of your connection, stretching back to all that is. If you exist, you have this connection. It's a part of every conscious existence in a very fundamental way. You may on occasion be aware of it as a subtle inner voice. You may normally be unaware of it. Sometimes you pull away from it, but you cannot exist without it. Feel it now. It's as real as you are. Good. So let's look at your hour-to-hour thinking. For a lot of that time, you're on a train of thought. One thought leads to another down familiar tracks. It's a big approximation, but for this discussion, you could say that your subconscious is providing the familiar tracks and timetable, and the conscious you is occasionally making override decisions. And then along comes that totally new idea. Where does that come from? Well, every new thought and new idea comes in part from the bigger you. Don't think in clumps, there's just more or less. But the point here is that these different energies that are you are always participating, more or less, in your experience. What's absolute about channeling is that it's one way of having the bigger you be more involved in your world, be a more conscious part of your everyday experience. Like everything else in your world, unique to you, it's a choice. The ability to channel isn't some sort of gift that only some people have. The spectrum of source that contains you is the same spectrum that contains everybody, and there are no boundaries. If you choose to surface some of this connection into consciousness, then you will be consciously channeling. It's as simple as that. Channeling is much more about unlearning what you can't do than learning to do something new. What form will it take? It could be writing, painting, sculpting, speaking, playing football, or anything you choose. With what entities will you be communicating? Well, even as you create your physical world around you and populate it with those others you intersect with, so it is you create your non-physical world. You could intersect with whatever you have chosen to believe is possible. Is there anything to fear? Well, we are not talking about absolutes here, and so we say, you tell us. We can say, absolutely, that non-physical contains no negative energy. But, as with all things, you will create your own reality with this. As always, simply choose what feels good. That will never lead you astray. How will you know it's happening? Well, fundamentally, if you're getting new ideas, it's happening. But will it ever feel like communicating with something other than just you? Yes. Let's use voice channeling as an example. Channeling is a collaboration between different parts of that spectrum and you. So how do you know what you're saying is at least partly them? You will be getting blocks of thought, and for some of those, even as you get them, you will know. You'll be thinking, that wasn't my idea. You may notice physical changes. And as you relax into this, you'll be more and more aware of the collaborative aspects of the interchange. What does a block of thought feel like? Well, let's establish something up front here. Today, when you're speaking normally to someone, you almost never choose your words. You could, but you don't. You have a thought you want to express, a block of thought, and your subconscious provides the words. That is why many of you are so afraid of public speaking. Because when you try to consciously speak particular words at the same time as thinking about what you're going to say next, you find you just can't do it. Your conscious processor doesn't have enough horsepower. Learning to speak publicly is learning to relax into having your subconscious choose the words and speak them for you. Channeling is similar. Channeled speaking is not like someone whispering words into your ear that you can repeat. Channeling is never a takeover of you as a delivery vehicle. You will be getting those blocks of thought and expressing them in the same way as you do today. You are always calling the shots, but you will be thinking with two minds, and you will know it. In that sense, channeling is not really a great choice of words. It's more like collaborating and translating. We have been asked, do channels ever get it wrong? When this community first began, at one point, Nina was channeling to this one about the value of astrology. Astrology, you see, was part of Nina's story. These days, Nina, of course, has discovered that it's a fun story for some, but that there's nothing absolute about it at all. Channeling is collaboration, and the channeler is always involved. At the time, the astrology story didn't feel good to this one. And of course, that's precisely how you can tell if it's a good story for you. But it was episodes like this that provided a powerful stimulus in this community to come at everything from a story-less foundation. It's interesting for us to see how those who start to consciously channel almost universally question themselves. Am I getting it right? Is this just me making it up? If that's you, we encourage you to relax into the process and treat it as just a normal part of who you are. As with life in general, be easy about all of this. It will become more and more obvious to you that there is powerful collaboration taking place. We say, have fun with it, and then you cannot get it wrong. Once again, you will know by how you feel. You are the one in charge. You are the one designing how much of your story gets mixed into this. Whatever happens, your audience will be a match to you and what you present. More generally to all of you, once you understand these principles, you will see evidence all around you of people channeling, consciously or unconsciously. You will hear authors describing how the characters in the book took over and told the story, and they just wrote it down. You will hear painters and musicians describing how something outside of them was part of the process. This one watched Denver Broncos linebacker Von Miller being interviewed after being ranked most valuable player in the USA 2016 Super Bowl. The interviewer said, "They say you have an uncanny sense of knowing where the ball is. Can you explain that?" Von laughed and replied, "I really can't. I just like to have fun out there. I don't feel like it's a job or work. I like to be out there with my teammates, and when there's an opportunity to go get the ball, I like to do it." From someone who understands little about the law of attraction, what a perfect answer that was. Having fun, feeling good. Can you see how it's not that he knows where the ball is? The ball knows where he is. This one remembers seeing singer-songwriter James Taylor being interviewed and praised for writing his many famous hit songs and becoming visibly uncomfortable about taking all the credit. He said, "I can't say that I wrote them. I'm just the one who heard them first and remembered them and wrote them down. I sort of channeled them." Clearly, James doesn't understand much about channeling. But once again, what a perfect description. As songwriter Carole King describes it, it's just a matter of getting out of the way. Creative people frequently say things like, "I don't know where it came from." Without knowing it, what they are talking about is an interchange with a greater aspect of themselves. They are channeling. As Abraham expresses it, everyone whom you see around you is an extension of source energy, and everyone has access to this broader knowing. If you tend to your vibration, you become one with what's there. That's the best definition of channeling that anyone could ever give. A basketball player who learns his skill, who gets tuned into the rhythm of who he really is, often describes being in the zone. Some of his extraordinary abilities when he's really tuned in like that, of being able to recognize his time and space and being able to judge where he is and the trajectory of the ball that he is throwing. All of this is because he is using more of his resources. Channeling, as this one describes it, is as normal and natural as having breakfast. You too can channel. In a very real sense, you're already doing it. And after you've taken the plunge, you'll discover the truth of what we said a little earlier. That consciously channeling is much more about unlearning what you can't do than learning to do something new. There's no right or wrong way to do it. For each of you, what transpires will be unique to you. So, as we said at the start, this book is channeled. Our particular mission is to definitively explain the fundamental nature of the law of attraction without the coloring of the stories you are all engaged in. When you come from this place, there is no question that cannot be answered, and you can step forward in any direction you choose to go. Welcome.
This Hangout on Air was the summary of our theme for the week. We do 3 live calls a week with Q&A for our members on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. You can become a member by going to the loaclub.com/join. And by the way, if you'd like support in opening up to channel, go to the loaclub.com and look at programs and contact us if you would like to start something there. Our longer discussion with Q&A continues now on our member conference line. So back over to Robin and Tara.